Hymn number 643. 643. Let's sing.
Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the morning, bright and fair? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the hope of brother's place where? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reapers work will soon be done. Will the sheep be made good garner, ready for the gathering at the harvest home? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, in the still and solemn cloud? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, for a harvest pure and wide? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reaper's work will soon be done. Will your sheep be made, will your garment ready for the gathering at the harvest home? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, all along the fertile way? Are you sowing the seed of the kingdom, brother, you must reap at the last great day? For the harvest time is coming on, and the reaper's work will soon be done. Will your sheep be made, will your garden gathering at the harvest home?
Hymn number 797. 797. Let's sing.
Lord, we come before thee now, at thy feet we humbly bow. Oh, do not soothe this day, shall we seek thee, Lord, in vain? Shall we seek thee, Lord, in vain? Lord, on thee our souls depend. In compassion now we send. Fill our hearts with thy rich praise. Tune our lips to sing thy praise. Tune our lips to sing thy praise. In thine own appointed way, now we seek thee, here we say. Lord, we know not how to go, till a blessing thou bestow, till a blessing thou bestow. Grant that all may seek and find thee unconsumably kind. Heal the sick, the captive free. Let us all rejoice in thee. Let us all rejoice in thee.
Song afterwards, Be in Me.
my demise have been greatly exaggerated. But my wife missed her window. She got smothered me with a pillow. Friday night, Saturday, even Sunday, and got away with it. Maybe even Monday. Probably not. So, it is definitely good to be back. I'm not 100%, but I'm a lot more than I was Friday night. And my wife will attest, if I say I need to go to the ER, there's a problem. And, in fact, Ron asked how I was doing. I said, well, at least I can go across the house now. Saturday morning, I made it to the refrigerator, to the microwave, and that was it. Anyway, so our lesson tonight is on Daniel chapter 6. And there are two main points of this lesson. And the first main point is Daniel's faithfulness. That's the easy one. And this, we have to think about the things that we're looking at. And some things I kind of looked over that are verified in the scriptures and pulled them up to show some things, especially concerning the Medo-Persian Empire. And the thing about Darius, Darius is a Mede. He's not a Persian. So his kingdom is actually a kingdom within the Persian Empire, the Babylonian province, more to speak. And so here's where the trouble for Daniel starts. And we do not know how long passed between the end of chapter 5, where it says that Nebuchadnezzar fell, or the Babylonian kingdom fell, and the Medo-Persians had taken over, and Darius was given the kingdom of Babylon. We don't know how long passed between 5 and 6. But we do know through references, Daniel is probably around 90 years of age at this point. He's an old man. Here's where we go. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. I don't know if that's satraps or satraps, but that's the way I say it. So, and over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. So here is a point that goes on. He has set up these 120. It normally translates from the Hebrew word to a viceroy type position. Daniel, of course, would be a governor, and they would be under him. And the whole point was so that they could give accountability. Then this Daniel, after he appointed those 3, this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. What do you do when you think about giving somebody a promotion? Huh?
Are they worth it?
Are they worth it? So who do you ask? See, a lot of times you're sitting there, if you got a group above them, you go, okay, let's talk about it. What do you think? Well, who does Darius have to talk to? He was going to make that decision, but he talked to somebody. I doubt it was Cyrus. I think he probably talked among them, some of the others. What do you think about Daniel? I think that, and of course, this is speculation, but it's obvious because what happens next, God put this in there that he gave thought to setting him over the whole realm so we could understand what happens next. So this, Jealousy. See, the very next is on the governors. And the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel. Why? Because he's fixing to put him over everybody. The other governors and the satraps. And who is Daniel? He's a Jew. He's a captive. That's one thing they bring up later. But this is their point of it. If they're Medes, how are they going to feel about this Jew being put above them? Plus this old Jew. You ever see anybody get insulted? I see guys quit because somebody came in and got promoted faster than they did because they've been there for a while.
While we're speculating, they may have in the past not treated him the way they should have.
They may have, but we really.
It's
Well,
as good as your speculation.
I at least have a comment. Now, here's one thing you can say. They did not respect him. They did not see him as worthy to be put over them. That's for sure. But notice, they could find no charge or fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault in him. So what do they got? You can't go get him for a job. He's doing too good of a job. We can't get him out there. No, we gotta trump up a way to get him guilty. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So here's the truth of the matter. Did the law in itself keep Daniel from serving the king faithfully? Did it keep him from giving honor to the king? Submitting to the king? So we got to find a way to make him seem to disobey the king. So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever." My daddy told me, and it served well all my life, the guy you just met that puts your arm around you and wants to be really friendly doesn't even really know you. Question their motives. Sometimes flattery, and I'm talking about just flat out flattery, is a giveaway that something's up. And so here they are all coming together. Guess who wasn't there? That should have been assigned to Darius. So all the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, all the governors, those three except one, this is what he meant, all those that were there, the administrators and satraps, those 120, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute, make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, a king establishes a decree and signs the writing so it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. Here's the catch. We get you to sign this, what happens?
Force him to follow through.
We can force it. And therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. It sounded okay. No big deal, right? There's one of these things backing up. Remember Esther? This would be about, if I'm calculations right, probably about 25 to 30 years after Daniel. You had a change of kings. Well, the emperor over Darius was different. That's what I mean. This is probably Xerxes. But then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, indeed I have given Esther the house of Haman, and have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. If you remember the book of Esther, Haman had got the king to give his signet without saying who he was going, just 8 people that were unfit to be in the kingdom. And he was able to write this decree that they be totally annihilated and use the king's signet rings. And this is after he's aware of everything. And Esther and Mordecai had pleaded with him to change the decree. So notice, he says, you yourselves write a decree concerning the Jews as you please in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet ring. For whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So Haman's letter could not be revoked. And what they did, they just wrote a new one that said the Jews could defend themselves. And so it wasn't just going to be an open slaughter. And that they would be helped by whoever. So there is that point that they did. They just wrote a new decree. And that's in the mindset we have to have of, does Daniel know this? Yeah, he has to know this decree can't be changed. And that tells us something about Daniel. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. That's the first night. And in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. He didn't change what he was doing. And he knew that his life could be in jeopardy. But that didn't matter to Daniel. Now notice, then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. They were watching. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. Now here's the interesting point. You think they'd been watching him before? They had been. That's how they came up with the deal. Anybody petition any God or man other than you. So they already knew that he had a habit of praying 3 times a day. And then they just went to see if he still did it. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not offer. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, gone from this Daniel to that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. This sounds kind of familiar. Go back to Daniel chapter 3. Those people that were trying to get Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego put in the fire. Ananias and Mishael. What's the last one? Ananias, Mishael, Azariah. Ahazariah. That's their Hebrew name. But notice, that Daniel. It's interesting, Daniel's no longer being called by the Babylonian name. Change of guard. Name goes back to what it was. This is where the plot is. That Daniel that you plan to make governor over us all. not show due regard to you. He disrespected you. And notice, and the king, when he heard these words, was greatly displeased with himself. That's a little different from Nebuchadnezzar, right? And Nebuchadnezzar was mad. He was angry. He was furious when he heard that they wouldn't bow down to his statue. But he did give him a chance to change. And then he got even more mad when they answered. And notice, he set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. What does that mean? He's searching every which way. How can I keep from doing this? Then the men approached the king and said to the king, "Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians, that no decree or statute which the king established may be changed." Okay, so where does the king go? If you got a problem with the king and he won't follow through, where do you go there? I would have went to the emperor. That's the next step. So we will put you in a place. You sign this, now you got to follow it through, or it's you. So, here's a little comment in 1 Timothy. Kind of fits, chapter 5, verse 20-22. I charge before God and Lord Jesus Christ, select angels, that you observe these things without prejudice, doing nothing with partiality. Do not lay hands on anyone hastily, nor share in other people's sins. Keep yourself pure. How does that fit in with Darius? What will a lawyer tell you today when you're given something that's written that you're supposed to sign? Read it carefully. Darius didn't weigh out the possibilities with that decree he signed until now. He never asked, what is their motive? Oh, it's just to give me honor and praise. Now he's starting to think they had a motive. They had a plan. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of the lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, "Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." That indicates there's been some time for Darius to get to know Daniel. And he's seen how Daniel was served. And here's the thing, even though the Babylonian Empire had failed, what about the Chronicles? All those kingdoms kept Chronicles. Think maybe Darius had read about Daniel in those Chronicles? It's a definite possibility. And notice that statement. He will deliver you. This is the second point of chapter 6. It is establishing, much like chapter 5 did Nebuchadnezzar's faith, Darius' faith be not. Oh, so then a stone was brought, laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and the signets of his lord, so the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. I mean, you couldn't open that stone without people knowing. It was sealed. Nobody could go and rescue Daniel from the lions. And I want you to get this in mindset. Daniel's put in there, and the stone is placed. And the lions have yet to do anything. Now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also, so his sleep went from him. Why not?
He's worried about what he's done.
He's worried about what he's done. He's worried about Daniel, and he's like, I was dumb. I was stupid. You know, this is the point. He's like, he didn't want anything to eat, no entertainment to soothe him. They probably tried, but he said no. And he didn't sleep. Then the king rose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions? I suspect, and this is almost evidence of it, that he was praying to Daniel's God to deliver him from the lions. This tells us something about our faithfulness and the influence on those outside. Darius didn't get all these conclusions just overnight. Now here he's worried. He said he will deliver you, but he's also worried. He wants to believe it. He wants to see it. And then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him, and also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. What was it that kept Daniel from, besides faithfulness, what he was being faithful to, from petition only the king? Huh?
God himself.
Okay.
God.
I'm looking for something in the law. Same thing that kept Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from falling down before that image. No other gods before me. Daniel's deal of it in 30, even though it's only 30 days, if I obey this, I'm putting Darius over God. And therefore, he was found innocent. And then the king was exceedingly glad for him and commanded they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he believed in his God. Chapter 14 in Ezekiel. 3 times God speaks of these 3 men. Most of the chapter he does. He talks about placing judgment upon a kingdom, our government, bringing a famine, bringing soldiers, bringing whatever, destruction, pestilence. And he makes this statement that when he's determined to do that, because of their continual wickedness, he makes a statement. Even if these 3 men, Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, they would deliver only themselves by their righteousness. What's he doing there? Who was Noah? He built an ark. His faithfulness is being held up. Why he found favor in the eyes of the Lord? Because he was probably the most faithful on earth. How about Job? Faithful. Through all the trials, through all the losses, through everything, he stayed faithful.
And even if you're related, you can't inherit somebody else's righteousness.
Well, that's true, you can't, but I'm using why these 3 were named. I'm not talking about that other point, and that's right, but the reality of it is, if you go back and think about Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham's bargaining. And I think this is more on that reference, that even if those three were there, it's not going to save the people, save that government.
Ezekiel 13, maybe it's 18, where it says, the soul that sins.
The soul that sins, it shall die. And it doesn't matter how righteous they are in it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if the son is righteous, the father's wicked, the father's going to suffer. If the father's wicked or righteous and the son is wicked, the son's going to suffer. It comes back to this point, but this point here, what I'm making is, of all the people who had lived, when God is explaining this to Ezekiel, he chose Noah, Daniel, and Job as the example. And that's my point. And here's Ezekiel, and this is written well before the Medes and Persians. Ezekiel himself being a captive of Nebuchadnezzar with the people, Daniel's in the court. And there's a name that Ezekiel recognizes. He didn't recognize all three, but Daniel is a contemporary. And so it's almost like no matter what you may think about Daniel, Daniel serves me well. And so there's the point. Other thing there on that last part of that verse, why was he delivered? No injury or whatever was found on him because he believed in his God. He trusted and obeyed. The point problem with that, to Daniel's mind, if it cost me my life, I'm going to serve.
Simply put, faith.
Well, faith. Yep. Nothing but faith. Pure faith. Unwavering faith. Because he knew that the result, if it was brought before Darius, it was the lion's den. And he prayed anyway. He did not turn his back. Careful what you sow, because you may reap. And the king gave the command, and they brought those men who accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children, their wives, and the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Why? Why would Darius do such a thing? They had used him. Well, but where those accused them, they didn't actually make up the plot. These plotted. They conspired to destroy Daniel. They came up with a decree. Back in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar wrote that decree all by himself. He's the one that had the statue built. These guys just said, here's an opportunity. These guys, they designed it.
They undermined in a way the king and what he needed to do.
There you go. They undermined the king. In fact, if Daniel was so faithful, what would it be to lose a servant like Daniel? It hurt the kingdom. They had really no regard for the kingdom, just for themselves. And no regard for Darius, only for themselves. And Darius recognized that. And here's the thing. If they do that to Daniel, what would they do to Darius?
They were already using him.
They've already used him. They would trip him up. They would destroy him. In fact, by sitting there and bringing that command and holding his feet to the fire, so to speak, to put Daniel in that lion den, they actually showed that if they had to, they'd get rid of him too, to get rid of Daniel. So here's the other one. And this is interesting. Remember how I brought up that when Daniel was put in the lion's den, they were able to put the stone over him, boom, 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 nothing was going on? Notice, now, they cast them, they cast their children, they cast their wives, their whole families.
So, innocent suffer will be guilty.
There you go. The innocent suffer because of the guilty. Isn't that what God told us? That he would bring punishment upon even to the 10th generation. That doesn't mean that they're held accountable in judgment, suffer in this life because of it. Notice, and the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den.
Gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, gnashing of teeth.
Sounds like a little help from above.
My thought exactly, a little help from above. In fact, what they did was, when you read this and understand it, and breaking all their bones and pieces and everything, they basically were killing them to devour later.
Any way you want to die, it's not good.
It's not good. It's not good. And then,
It shows us nowadays too that the consequences of our sin are not just consequences that we do, it affects us around.
well, let's examine that a little bit here. You walk away from the church. Who do you usually end up taking with you? Family, wife, or husband, children. You have the wrong influence, you use the wrong influence, and you can cost everybody their soul. That's what I was thinking about when I was doing this morning. See, they cost their family their lives. Okay, children, we know they're probably not of an age, so they're not going to be held in judgment. But let's think about this. If you're allowed to live, and you live unfaithfully, and you influence that unfaithfulness upon your wife and your children, what happens to them? Now, as Paul said, they're led astray too. Are they accountable for their own actions?
Yes.
Yes, as Ron pointed out, Ezekiel 18 bears out. They are accountable for their own actions. But am I accountable for the influence that I had in helping them go that direction?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And their deeds do follow them. So,
And their deeds do follow them. So here's the deal. We all know it'd be terrible to go to heaven. You want to add to that punishment? Look over there and see your child and say, I'm partly to blame for them being here. You think God's not going to put that in the minds of people? That's part of the punishment.
We have people even here, are unfaithful.
Well, we're just trying to look at that, Paul, and explain it so that maybe someone will get the message.
Yeah, that's correct.
You know, and that's the thing. But here's the other point. Is it just wives and children? You mentioned it yourself.
No.
Friends. What about brethren?
Yeah.
We could actually have that kind of influence on brethren. It just reminds us that faithfulness is rewarded and unfaithfulness has an influence too. Daniel's faithfulness influenced Darius. Unrighteousness influences people to be unrighteous.
Maybe that's why Jesus said, whoever loves father and mother more than me is not worthy.
That's exactly why he said it. Brother or sister, son or daughter, that's exactly why I said it. Because if you're going to let them dictate what you do, they can draw you away. So you have to put me first. And that comes back, I think Joey mentioned in his lesson, that comes back to putting God first, having no other God before him, and loving him with all your heart, all your mind, with all your soul. Because if I don't have him first, I'm never going to influence them to keep him first. Now, they may reach that on their own, but I have to have it first. And that means, I remember my kids were 9 and 11 when I went to preaching school. And Alex said something that just struck me in the wrong way, because there was always an argument on the other side. And I just looked at him and I said, son, I can't make you go to heaven, but I am not going to go to hell with you if that's the path you choose. It does. And he realized that, you know. And so we have to think about this, and this is an example of this. I can call, even if they stay faithful, I can still cause my family problems through my sin.
Or rebellion doesn't.
Yeah. Rebellion. Yeah. You know, look how many died in the wilderness because of that rebellion. Over 600,000 in one day. Okay, now, here's the real deal. Darius' decree reminds me a lot of Nebuchadnezzar's decree at the end of chapter 4. There's a light bulb that has came on that's outshining the sun. Notice that King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. Much like Nebuchadnezzar, except not as hard of a lesson. Darius believes in God as the one true living God. And notice, so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. What was it, Cyrus?
He was the king of kings.
He was king of kings, but what did he do?
He did that to return.
Allow the Jews to return.
And he was actually popular, very popular with wealth.
Yeah. He was very welcoming. He was a whole different point. But here is the thing right here.
This may have set his mind.
So,
Witnessed and read about, that made him more congenial towards the Jews.
that's right. And it definitely did Darius. And here's the thing that we come back to. As much as we looked at Esther to see God's providence going on in Esther, It goes on in Daniel too. His sovereignty, but his providential workings. This is different with Nebuchadnezzar. He had two dreams, and that statue in between, that statue that he built as a god, and they would fall down to him the music. Darius, we don't have any of that, but somewhere in working with Daniel, he got to know Daniel and his faithfulness to God. And then here comes these guys with an idea. That little note of him thinking of putting Daniel over all the governors and satraps. That thought, see, he thought of, how does anyone know what you think? You have to tell them.
The theme of the whole book is God rules the kingdom of man.
Well, that's the thing with the whole book, but here, we can't ignore God also bringing others to him through his working. There's providence all in that book, as well as prophecies.
That proclamation going out to all his dominion, that's a pretty positive statement to God.
It is, and the Darius's belief in God. And it's very similar to the
There's
one.
no way of measuring what the effect was on the city.
No.
Or people coming to obey God.
That's right. And we don't know what effect it was. But God is telling us this had something to do with the point that a lot of people, when you get to Esther down years down the road, and that proclamation out, when they rewrite that other decree, people join them in defending themselves against their enemies. In fact, if you go back and you look, when Haman writes that decree and puts it up, the whole city of Shushan, it says, is perplexed. Why? Why would the king want to have all the Jews put to death? That's exactly what's going through the people's mind. Because God had already established through Jeremiah that if he put somebody over them, including Nebuchadnezzar, they better bow down and serve him. And serve him well. That was the problem with those in Jerusalem. They were refusing. And so it was a reminder, I'm in charge. All this, the Jews became, as much as they didn't like being captives, they became very much the best citizens, so to speak, most of them, during this time frame. Remember what Esther said? It was when she told the king, or certainly Ahasuerus, as in the scriptures, it would cost the king much loss to lose these people. Even to put them into slavery would be a great cost to him because of what he would lose from those people. Mm-hmm. So here is the point. God rules in the kingdoms of men, and his providence moves in ways we don't always see to bring the least likely person that we may suspect to serving him. We have in the book of Daniel 2 kings turning to serve God. Invitation song. In need. Or are we ever in need? Let's stand and sing.
In need of grace, in need of love, in need of mercy raining down from high above, in need of strength, in need of peace, in need of things that only
my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need of grace, in need of love, in need of mercy rain down from high above, in need of strength, in need of peace, in need of things that only you can give to me. In need of Christ, the perfect Lamb, my living song, the great I am. This is my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need of Christ, the perfect Lamb, my refuge strong, the great I am. This is my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need. I am your child, I am in need.
First of all, will you lead us in close prayer?